Hello, thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today. I can see lots of familiar faces who were actually with us for our launch event back in March 2023, and so we're super grateful to have you here as we now round off and finish the programme. For those of you who are brand new to Curiosity in Action, you've maybe only come to one of our events, maybe none of them. We will be chatting a lot more about it. I'm not going to get into too much detail because we'll be hearing firsthand from all the partnerships that have been involved in the programme very shortly. But one thing I did want to just share is like one of the really valuable things that has come out of this programme and really key piece of learning for myself personally and just for my team at Science Cayley has been how important partnership work is and how important collaboration is. And so we really hope that will come out today in this space and that you'll get the chance to experience that with all the peers that are here today. We've had a whole team supporting us. We've had an amazing steering group who have kind of offered their guidance and advice throughout the programme. We've been working with these incredible partnerships of youth workers and researchers, really keen to support young people and the social impact that we can have on them using STEM as a tool to do that.
We've got, you can see quite a lot of people joining us for the panel. But just to very briefly set a little bit of context about the programme, and then I'll introduce each of the people who've been involved in our action research one by one, and you can give them a wee clap, of course, if you like. The Curiosity in Action was funded by the Science Technology Facilities Council, and the key role of the programme built on a lot of the work we've been doing in youth work for a very long time, which asked this question of how can STEM be a tool for youth work, and how can youth work be a critical collaboration and opportunity for STEM to engage with different young people. STEM has always had a challenge of who gets involved in STEM, who's STEM for. The diversity around STEM conversation has been going on for a very long time, and I think there's always been this question about how do we work with young people who are facing the sharp end of disadvantage, who are not represented, who don't see themselves within science, technology, engineering and maths. And it's one of these questions which actually, for any of you who've been involved in youth work, community learning and development, this is what this whole sector is about. It's building trusted relationships, being led by young people, and over the long term, supporting young people to develop their aspirations, their confidence, their resilience, all these kind of social outcomes. And one thing that I think within STEM engagement has been missing is that very often it feels very, dare I even say transactional very often? So when we think about STEM engagement, it very often is summarise of what have young people learned, what have they taken away, what do they end up going into STEM careers, and that's not to say these things aren't important, but it's missing the person. And I think that's a really valuable part of the work that youth work and community learning and development does. And so Curiosity in Action really came as a way of exploring this, building evidence around this, around using action research. So what role can STEM play in making a difference to young people, particularly those who are underrepresented as a tool for youth work? How can youth workers and scientists, particularly those involved with Science Technology Facilities Council type research, but also broader, be able to work together, to collaborate, to bring the expertise together? It's not a training program, it's not just about here's some STEM tools, it's about identifying that everyone has different skills and expertise to bring into a partnership and explore this, work with the young people and develop that evidence. And how do we broaden this output and this approach with the wider sector? And of course, these types of community events are very much one of the ways that we've been doing it, alongside training as well. Very briefly, as an organisation, our work as a social enterprise is all about exploring creativity, curiosity and well-being across Scotland. We've been working in interdisciplinary learning for a very long time now. But in terms, a lot of our work has now also gone into more thinking about funding, thinking about how we can fund communities, young people, particularly in rural and island spaces, to lead research and do research themselves. But of course, we still remain true to our roots and doing community activities and delivering that as well ourselves. So, how do we answer that question and these questions? So we very much in short embedded youth work, STEM in youth work by building these connections between youth workers and researchers. We call them the scientists in residence for around a year for these partnerships to develop. And in some cases, we had 2. We had a lot of learning from the first year. It took a long time for these partnerships to develop. There's always capacity challenges, I think, in both sectors. In CLD, for youth workers, it's an incredibly difficult time. And similarly, for researchers, there's lots of things that researchers have to, oh dear, to navigate. And of course, the researchers are doing it in their own time as well. And that's always really difficult. And it doesn't always coincide. But when it does work, it's magical. And so we had them connect together. They were co-developing their activities, thinking about what activities were working well, what their young people were interested in, and then tailoring the activities and the partnership from there. I'm going to introduce some of the people in the room very shortly to come up, but just to give you a flavour of where we the partnerships were. We did provide a little bit of funding and support for the youth workers' time. We really appreciate that as really valuable, and there was a lot of wraparound support. And I think if I was going to summarize anything from the program, it's about these partnerships takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of translation and support through these partnerships, and thinking about the different support needs, the different travel expenses, the different contexts. So some of them are more rural, some are more urban, and think of the different needs that are had. And again, I'm going to be very thankful with Casey and Natalia and the support that they provided as well throughout this whole program. And we took an action research approach, which I'm not going to talk this all through too much, but in brief, it's about really valuing the different expertise that the different groups had. And we had a lot of reflections. We brought everyone together online and in person at the very beginning of each of the years to try and share learning, to co-create different ideas of what we might want to experiment, what each group might want to prioritize, and then we reflect and then use that as a way of planning the next set of activities as well. So, for the panel, can I introduce the different speakers? We've got Kat from Think Circus. You can pick any chair you like on your. We've got Loki from Heriot-Watt University. We have Neve from Hearts, Home Ground. We have Ben, University of Edinburgh. Danny, if you want to come up, thank you. From Eat, Sleep, Ride in the Borders. We have David and Connor, University of Glasgow. Raj Kumar from the University of Strathclyde, and Stuart Mitchell and Rachel Alexander from Auchinleck Community Development Initiative. Hopefully I've got enough chairs. Just about. One extra even, but no, we're perfect, grand. So hopefully that sets a bit of context to where we are. And I'm going to get my notes up over here. The first question hopefully is a very easy one. I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourselves a bit more properly, more than I can do justice to. You're all doing incredible work in your youth with young people or in research. So if you can introduce yourself briefly, and for the youth workers, tell us a little bit about what you do, what's the format of your youth group, and for the researchers, maybe just a wee flavour of your research. And I do have a mic here, so let's turn this on. Thanks very much. Kat, do you want to kick us off?
Okay. Hi there, I'm Kat Borrowdale. I'm from Think Circus. So we are a social circus. We have a purpose beyond the big top. And we primarily use circus arts as a way to particularly work with children and young people and improve their confidence, their physical skills, and also well-being. And we also work with adults as well, if anyone here is keen. And yeah, the different projects that we do, we have a teen circus project, we also run youth classes, and the project we were involved in Curiosity in Action with is called Girls Forest Circus, which is a partnership with Castleview Primary in Craigmillar and Rowan Environmental Arts. So, pass on.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Loki. I'm a researcher in Heriot-Watt University. I mainly work with lasers. So lasers for biomedical application is the project that I'm currently in. We're trying to make tools to access areas that you cannot access so easily inside the body. And with the youth club, youth member here with Neve, here in Tynecastle Park, we actually are trying to introduce lasers to young children. And lasers, as you can see, they are all very excited all the time, but then how to safely tell them how to use a laser and how can we incorporate that in daily life. It's been a lot of learning for me as well.
Hi, I'm I'm going to introduce myself again. My name is Neve and I work at the Hearts Innovation Centre. And the way our kind of youth group works is we run 6 to 8 week projects. So for Curiosity in Action, we had 6 weeks of kids coming in after school for 90 minutes up to 2 hours, learning about science. No one in our youth group has any science background. We, if I'm honest, are mostly focused on like robotics and things like that. So science was like a new thing for us to do. But yeah, really enjoyed working it.
So hi, I'm Ben. I'm a physicist. I work at the Institute for Astronomy up at the Royal Observatory. What I do is I work on developing tests of gravity using the positions and shapes of galaxies. I was partnered with this person who's going to introduce herself very soon. Yeah, I think that's it. I'll let her.
I think that's the first thing we got to hear. Sorry, my name's Danielle. Is that working?
Yes, good.
Danielle McKinnon, and I run Eat, Sleep, Rides. We're a rural charity essentially using the concepts of biomimicry, so learning from nature, in particular a herd of 20 rescue horses. And we run that from a solar-powered farm. We have lots of initiatives like food growing and most recently a biofuel production to try and turn our horse poo into something meaningful. We worked with Benjamin, who didn't really get the chance to explain what he did. The children knew him as a science guy in the onesie, which they loved. But we ran a series on our youth club, so there were kids from, God, we had ones that were 8 right up to, well, 20s, the older girls, and the volunteers who were sometimes in their 60s as well. So it was quite a range of people that came and learned. So yeah, it was a really amazing initiative to just to make the children curious, I felt. And then we got to wrap it off with an amazing visit to the observatory where Lacey still asks me how many rocks are in the sky, because it wasn't a definitive number, supposedly. So yeah, that's us.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you. Hi, I'm David. I'm a researcher at the School of Physics and Astronomy at University of Glasgow, and we were working with Jordan and Kieran at Paisley YMCA, who unfortunately can't be here today, I think. So we kind of, I say we, it's Connor and myself. Connor will explain, I'll let Connor explain a bit more about what we did at Paisley YMCA so I don't steal everything. But yeah, we kind of, at university we work on energy materials, we like making new materials, and in particular we're looking at replacing the gases in the back of fridges to try and make them more energy efficient and environmentally friendly and things like this. So yeah, I'll pass over to Connor who can maybe explain a bit more about what we did at Paisley.
Hi, I'm Connor. I'm David's PhD student, so I'm also a researcher at the University of Glasgow. As David said, we were particularly working with like different types of energy materials. So what we did with Paisley YMCA was we brought a thermal imaging camera and we let the kids use it and see sort of how infrared light interacts differently with different materials and different objects. And it kind of got the kids thinking about sort of how does heat respond to different surfaces, and what they actually discovered, which was quite interesting for us, is that they could write messages with the heat from their fingers on the walls, and then you could use the camera to actually read what they'd written. So it was quite fun.
Hello, my name is Raj. I'm a resident scientist also at the YMCA, Paisley. I'm a PhD student at the University of Strathclyde. I work in computational chemistry, so mostly discovering new drugs that can be transported to different organs efficiently. And when I'm free, I also volunteer for various science activities. There's this Glasgow Science Festival that I recently did, and we were bringing this VR stuff to show the kids how the blood cells are and then project them in the space. But one of the kids got super excited and shouted, "Mom, I see an octopus." That's not what we are going for, but does that.
Hi, I'm Rachel and this is Stuart, and we work at ACDI. We run a weekly youth club. There we do, well, it's 8 to 12-year-olds, and we do creative arts and crafts, board games, sport, cooking sessions, space for open conversations like mental health and things, trips and days out, and also curiosity in action. We had a scientist in residence, Charles. He was from the University of Aberdeen, so he came down and done astronomy and stuff. And we also had Giuliano and Sophie, who came down and done more fun experiments like Coke and Mentos and stuff, making a mess essentially.
Amazing, and I know that was introduction for both of you. I guess we're going to go down the line. I just think logistically, just in terms of the microphone, I've already shared a little bit of context of what the aim of the Curiosity in Action was, which is bringing the two departments together. And I guess, given that, what was the partnership like? I guess maybe some of the practicalities, how often you met, what kind of things you explored, maybe a highlight. I've given about a couple of minutes for each partnership, so maybe a real highlight. Stuart.
So when we first heard about the Curiosity in Action brief, we knew it was really something that we wanted to bring to our youth club to give the children that come along something different to do that they wouldn't normally have the opportunity to do. And to make science seem something that's not intimidating, but something that they could really own and explore. So Rachel kind of gave you the highlights, but I'm going to go into a wee bit more depth about what we did in year one. So one of the standout moments was when Charles came down from Aberdeen University and brought one of his physics students, Alexei, along with a telescope, not just any telescope, but an astronomical telescope system with a virtual universe app. This let the young people explore space, trace star constellations, and just generally connect with the cosmos. And it was magical. Seeing the stars through Charles's telescope was cool, a moment of awe, but slightly terrifying as we hoped that the telescope would not get broken. For some, it was the first time they'd ever looked through a telescope, and it sparked loads of questions about space. And having Alexei as a student along with Charles helped make it more relatable for the young people because he is closer to their age, and it kind of showed that young people can kind of move into science. And if you want to see some photos of the day, if you have a wee look at page 34 or the bottom of page 43 of your toolkit, there's some pictures of the day. We also had Giuliano and Sophie visit, and they brought a completely different energy to their session. It was very fun, hands-on, and challenged stereotypes of what a scientist is. It's not just about lab coats and textbooks, it's about curiosity, creativity, and play. Seeing that the researchers were warm and funny and relatable helped break down barriers and made science feel accessible. As Rachel said, the activities they'd done, the Coca-Cola and Mentos and that, it was an absolute hit. And it helped show that science can be playful and allowed them to be expressive.
Thanks, Stuart. How about for you, Raj? How did it all work?
We actually did a few activities. Some David led and some I did. So one of the activities I did is showing the same VR stuff to the kids. And that was fun. People, this time they were more engaged because it's a closed space and we had a few hours just explaining stuff. So it was fun. And another time, Kieran and Jordan from the YMCA actually, he had this ice cream sticks and we were trying to build this boat. And then finally, after everyone built the boat, the idea is to see whose boat can hold the most weight. That's when they got excited. Everybody was there just throwing stuff into it to see if it holds. But sometimes they were a bit sad that it sunk. But there was this one boat which we had no hopes for because it just looked like one big plate. But it did hold all the weight. So yeah, so that was a win, I guess.
So even the scientists were surprised.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this was not even in the plan. So. Yeah.
Youth work never goes to plan, so that's it.
Yeah. So that was fun. But David also did a few activities.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think what Raj failed to mention about the boat is that we started changing what constitutes a boat. It was basically just a bunch of sticks sort of held together, and as long as it wasn't touching the bottom of the box that the water was in, then it was considered to be floating. So David and I had mentioned previously we'd brought like a infrared imaging camera, and we'd brought a few materials, so like a bin bag, some aluminium foil, a perspex screen, and like a metal hot plate. well, not hot plate. And so we would have the kids take the IR camera, which is a little bit daunting at times because, as I'm sure many people are aware, kids will just run around with it and just do whatever they want. But it was interesting. They essentially led the activity themselves and would find different materials that they wanted to look at and see how it would respond. And then you could see the cogs turning. They were trying to figure out why is it responding this way. Yeah, no, it was great fun.
But just to add that, yeah, we always planned to do more than we expected with the thermal camera, but the kids would always, the young people would always just go in whatever direction they wanted, and we never kind of predicted where it would end up going, what they would want to look at, and that was a very amazing aspect to the days we took it there. But yeah.
I think I remember in the interview, you were maybe in year one a bit skeptical about how interesting they'll find fridges, but actually they were really into fridges. So that's the curiosity there. Yeah, amazing. Danny, how was it for you?
Our partnership was really good. The challenge was the reality of our location. So we managed to meet up in Edinburgh to have all these grand plans, which obviously don't go to plan. But I do remember the first session where we just asked the kids what we thought science was. And there's about 27 of us in the port cabin. And they didn't really understand the concept at first, did they? And so we sort of gave them a little nudge, and then they had all their ideas about, everything's really science. It was interesting to see just their ideation, I suppose, around just that word. And then they were really lucky because that first session, Benjamin showed them how to slackline. So that was the highlight of their day. So everyone got a chance to slackline, and then in turn, they got to show Benjamin how to share leadership with a horse. So they gave Benjamin a session on the ground with the horse naturally. So the horse had to stay within a circle. Benjamin was part of that circle and lead. Essentially, you around the arena, didn't you? And then Benjamin actually got a shot on a horse. So part of their highlight was to throw him on the Clydesdale and potentially make it go as fast as possible. But that didn't. But that was a really good first day. And then it really set up the second session we did was our Halloween event, which was mad anyway, because there was about 60 kids there throughout the whole day. But we did, Ben had made heads. So we did the elephant's toothpaste exercise with exploding heads in the back room in between pumpkin soup and riding horses and dunking for apples, and Benjamin dressed up in a cow onesie. So that was literally
there is a picture
on
of
the
that
children's
later.
Mind. They're like, the science guy dressed as a cow, we like him. So that just became Benjamin's name for essentially the rest of the project. But yeah, we had great times when it worked out. But you definitely see just the difficulty of trying to get to an outdoor site, and especially trying to do experiments in gale force winds on an outdoor site, and trampolines flying away and things we hadn't massively expected. But yeah.
I'm just going to echo what Danny said. That was really great, and a lot of we did 4 sessions, 4 or 5, yeah. And they were all a success, except the trampoline one you mentioned. Yeah, that was after. Yeah, so we had gotten this trampoline off Gumtree, which was way too big. It was bigger than these tables, and I never knew how many parts there were to a trampoline. There's a lot, and thankfully Danny had a pickup truck, so we got this trampoline all the way to Berwick. We had a little demonstration. I also got a bowling ball, and I wanted to show how gravity works with the trampoline and this bowling ball. But I remember I forgot his name.
He still has that ball.
He's
written on that ball.
He wanted to drop this bowling ball from a really high height onto the trampoline and see what happens, and I had to prevent him from doing that. Yeah. But yeah, besides the logistics, it was really good. We met up in person a lot, and we discussed things. We had a document keeping track of everything, so everything was quite organized. We took feedback pretty well, so we kept that in mind too. Yeah, it was just very good. Yeah, very good experience.
Each session,
yeah.
When we got the chance, we did have, and the parents were really, the parents quizzed you probably more.
Yeah, they did.
It brought conversation in with families. Because
Yeah.
loads of the parents were interested.
Very interested, yeah, that's
in
true.
space.
Yeah. Right, yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Thanks both. I think it really speaks to, I mean, we're definitely going to be talking about the challenges and the logistics and the very different schedules that researchers, scientists, and the youth workers have. But I think what you were talking about, and I think echoed with some of the other conversations. I remember the thing that we really recommend is in that first session for the scientists not to come in to deliver something, but just be themselves, whether that's wearing a onesie or just, just joining in or listening, playing football, and then just enjoying, because I think that very, very often is this feeling within STEM engagement, you have to deliver something and it has to be immediately with that, whereas I feel like the youth work approach is about building trust and understanding what the young people are doing, what they can teach you as much as what you can share with them, and even if they know nothing about the science, if they don't remember the science, but they remember the fact that you were a scientist who was up for, a laugh, and even if they didn't let you throw things from really high heights, then that actually does a lot in terms of what they expect a scientist to look like or be. Neve, how was it for you?
So we did year 1 and year 2. This year we had 2 female scientists, which I think was really powerful for our kids. So they were coming into this place to learn about science, and they had 2 female science in residence, and then I was leading it, and I think that really kind of opened doors for a lot of these kids. They're usually quite local kids, so they might not have all these opportunities around, but seeing the kids build this relationship with Loki and Sarah and building the questions we did. Probably one of the highlights for me is one thing we did was ask the scientist postcards. So because we had 2 scientists in residence, they kind of alternated weeks. So if someone had a question or they had often a statement that they would like the scientist to read out, which turned funny, but they would write this postcard and I could upload it to our Padlet and let the scientists see it. So yeah, that was their it was really nice to see them interacting. The first week we put the postcards out, everyone was kind of a little skeptical of them. Some things were just like, I don't think that's right, written on the postcard, and you're like, well, it's 2 weeks later, I have no idea what you mean by that, dude. But thanks for taking the initiative to write it down. But by week 6, they were asking really thoughtful questions, and you could just see how much their kind of critical thinking skills had developed in that 6 weeks. And yeah, I think the Ask the Scientist postcards, that kind of highlighted how well they worked throughout for me.
Thanks, Neve. Loki?
For me, starting off with lasers. So they were all like, when can we see the lasers? That was the first question. So, and then if I touch the laser, will I get a hole on my hand? They were really scared in terms of safety aspects. They had no idea how to get through it. So in the beginning, there was a lot of curiosity around this. And the sessions we built was more like teaching them what is a laser and then talking to them about lenses, mirrors. We were building it slowly. So the last session, they can actually work with the lasers, and they could align a system. So this is something that I did a few years ago, and that's how I started. So the fact that I could bring that up and show it to kids was really wonderful. And also Neve had this excellent idea of doing a golden ticket sort of thing. That is, some of the kids who were really interested, where we had contests. So some people won, and they were brought to the labs so they can actually see how I work. So it was a whole circle. So now they were recognizing things in the lab and being like, oh, we did this, you do that, that's it, sort of thing. So it's a nice little build up slowly in terms of both personal relationships with these kids, but also professionally.
Kat?
Hi, yeah, so we were lucky enough to have 2 scientists working with us. So our first scientist, Rebecca, had a background in phonetics and kind of linguistics. So it was a really, really good match for our group because they have quite a big interest in performing, and the year just before Rebecca came, they had just put on their own show. So lots of them were really interested in music and also in kind of doing different accents and performing. And Rebecca was able to kind of connect them with how do different sounds originate in your body, and how can you produce sound in all of these different ways. So we had some really fun practical workshops with Rebecca, and we also did what kind of Lewis was saying about having an initial session where Rebecca came along and just met the group. We have the same group coming along. There's between 18 and 22 at the session, and we run outdoors in a small woodland within Castleview Primary. So because we do have the same group for the year, they get very, very attached to the adults that are coming along, and we find that it does take a few sessions to kind of for the girls to warm up. So we were able to see that happening by the time that Rebecca came for her third session, and that they were all kind of able to make embarrassing, weird noises in front of each other and relax in the workshop. And then, unfortunately, Rebecca had to leave the program a little bit early, and then we had a surprise guest of Katie, who was, you can't sit there, who was able to come out and run a few different activities. So Katie did parachute making and also raft building with the groups. And what was really, really nice about those were we're also like Eat, Sleep, Ride. We're in an outdoor space. And so that brings quite a lot of challenges, including when you're out in the winter trying to play around with your voice, but you can see your breath in the air and it's really cold. But yeah, Katie was able to work with that surrounding really well. So we got to make our rafts out of forage materials that we found in the woods, and we do quite a lot of foraging with the group already, so we were able to connect to that. And yeah, I couldn't believe how competitive the group got about building their rafts. And yeah, we were definitely seeing a lot of twisting of the rules of what constitutes a boat as well. But yeah, the parachute building was so popular that we had a session on Friday to sit down and plan what are we doing this year, and lots of people said we want to do the parachute building again, and is Katie coming back? So that's always a really good sign. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Hopefully that gives you a little flavour of all the very different youth groups and partnerships that happened and what was explored. And also acknowledging that not all the groups are here, not all the partners are here. Maybe one thing to highlight, you may have inferred, is obviously we ran the programme for 2 years. And the original plan was actually we'd have 5 different youth groups in each of the years. But because of by year 1, I think we really just got to a point where those relationships had really started, actually, and a lot of that, some of that was logistical, but I think even just the principle of after a few sessions, people were really keen to continue, and obviously for the partnerships that they could continue, we either kept the scientists, or in some cases added new scientists within the partnership, and again that helped in terms of the availability challenge very often, but we did also have 2 new partnerships come in the second year as well. Which obviously brought a different dynamic as well and different perspectives, which was incredible. The next question is about learning. So it can explore a whole bunch of different things, but if you could share one piece of learning with the sector about the work that you've done, the way that you've worked, the partnerships, what would it be? It could be a highlight, it could be a challenge, it could be encouragement for those who are listening. And we'll start with you, Kat.
No pressure. So yeah, I think, I'm trying to phrase this in a succinct way, but essentially that we can involve STEM to a greater degree in our projects than we thought before. And so I think I quite agree with the idea of widening STEM to that kind of STEAM perspective, in that there's so much in common with using arts in a similar way to how science, technology, education, engineering and maths is approached, because essentially in our project we're using kind of circus and forest school activities to attract young people to come along and get involved in something that they thought they never would, and then once we've built that really supportive environment, we're able to kind of really push what we try. And so coming in with a scientist and saying this is going to be a science activity, I had some real reservations as to whether that would kind of put off the girls, because they come out and they're in a wood and they're away from school, and they literally come out from their school classes and walk up the hill and come to us. So we thought, would that put them off? And actually they were so encouraging of each other to take part in it. And I think even just knowing that Rebecca and Katie are both scientists and having those conversations as, how's that job and what do you do, really opened up what what they could potentially do and be interested in. So yeah, it's kind of emboldened me to look more widely and not be scared to call things what they are, I suppose, within the group.
Thanks, Kat. How about for you, Loki?
I mean, we've heard a lot of people say how things don't really go according to the plan. You should always be flexible and adaptable. I would say in the beginning of these sessions, I had a plan. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to deliver this. And that is because, although I've done a lot of outreach, it's like a one-on session. So I have a toolkit and that's all I'm delivering. That doesn't work in this. So, I think as the sessions went on, we had a lot of ideas on how to ice break them, or if they're getting really distracted, how do we give them a small task to do and then get them back to doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, so that was very important, and I learned that you cannot be rigid. You need to, I need to start having fun, basically, and let it go, and that's when everything starts aligning. And because it really depends on the energy they bring to the table, how their day was, basically excited, crazy, or really nice. So yeah, so that was one thing. And another thing was I'm some sort of a softie, so if they go like, Loki, can we touch this? Can we do that? I'm going to say yes for everything. And then in 2 minutes, the entire place is completely crazy. So I learned that from Neve on how to actually learn to say no. And yeah, bring them to do things that we want to do. Yeah.
That reminds me, I remember you brought that up in the Acton research meetings, and what was really nice is that those types of ideas, one of the resources that develops is called Back Pocket Activities. It's a digital resource, so there'll be a link to it. But that came through one of these conversations where we were like, oh God, it would be great to have one place to put all these small little activities you can put in to refocus the group, or if they're really distracted or they need to be, they're very quiet, and how you can do that. So I really liked how that came through. And I remember you also talking about, learning how to be a bit stricter through Neve.
That makes me sound like the sharpball skill teacher. No.
Boundaries are good. Boundaries are always good.
One key piece of learning I would take away, and I would like to kind of hand on to the other youth workers in the room, is like, it's okay not to know, and it's okay to tell the kids that you don't know. Year one, our kind of scientist and resident partnership kind of fell through, so I was kind of leaning a lot on Katie and Lewis and the activities that came up, and every week kids are asking me, Neve, why are there only 4 bases in DNA? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've just got some midget gems for you to pair up. So yeah, it's kind of, I really learned through the 2 years. It's like it's okay to not know, and it's okay to tell the kids like, oh, I don't know. Like, why don't we research it together? And then there's also the kind of, we look it up together and we think, okay, this comes from Wikipedia. Is this a credible source? There's the critical thinking skills that go along with it. But yeah, really meeting the kids where they're at, just admitting when you don't know something, and just learning together, I think really strengthened that bond for me and those kids that I was there with. It was really nice we were all learning together, and we could do the research together. It was really nice.
Thanks, Neve. Ben.
Yeah, so I had some time to think about it, and I think I learned 2 main things, is that they're not as scary as you think they are. I think I was very scared on my first session, coming to meet like 20 young girls who I thought were going to just eat me alive. But they were all super lovely, very, very cute. So the first thing I learned is that you shouldn't be scared. The second thing is I learned how to manipulate them. So I know that they need an outlet for all this energy that they have. And so you should come prepared and have something for them to do. And then while they're doing that, you can sort of slip in the science and speak to them. And I got a masterclass from Danny, who's incredible with dealing with these kids. I'm like just amazed. I don't think I'll ever get to that level. But I think I did assimilate some things from you as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lovely thing to say. Yeah, I think, the horses with the young people, the first thing they learn is how to be resilient and empathetic, because they turn up in every weather. And actually, horses just want you to be kind. So they're really open to learning when they're in that situation. And I think for me, the whole project just always pushes me to want to keep giving young people opportunities, because they just sucked everything up. There was nothing they didn't want to do or try. But it is finding the right content, the right environment, before you can start asking the questions if you actually want to have a relationship that goes both ways. So it's just recognising, a bit like what you said, meeting the kids where they're at. I mean, we really believe in young people, and I think they're kind of the next people that are going to take over the world, and they have to do it better than we do it now. So it's really important that they're given a space to continue to keep learning and asking questions, so we don't stay in this kind of systematic top-down system, and they have the choice to make change. So that just always elevates that to me, that there needs to be opportunity given at every chance for young people to learn.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you. I've got too much to say. I'm going to try and be quick and succinct. But I echo definitely the views on it's okay not to. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay not to know, and it's okay that things don't go to plan. And reflecting on the whole process, I think actually that kind of gets trained out from a researcher's background. That kind of gets trained out of you. That curiosity element. You need to know. You have to have a plan. And something comes out at the end of it, and it was nice to kind of not have that hanging over you by the end, although it took a while for me to realise this. But anyway, I didn't want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the importance, I think, again, from a researcher's perspective of including this kind of STEM engagement in funding. There were definitely logistical problems, not problems, but hurdles to overcome with our partnership in terms of finding available time and things like this. And so now I've realized when we're looking for scientific funding, we need to include this kind of engagement as an integral key part. It's not just about the research, it's also got to have elements such as this included in it, so people have time to build these relationships and get these things out of it. So yeah, I totally agree with everything everyone said, and also just wanted to say that as well.
I think everyone's nabbed everything I wanted to talk about. I think for me as a young researcher, the thing that really that I had to learn was just that nothing's going to go the way you want it to. I think with as David was saying, coming from a research background, I think you get so used to the structure of things. There's a way of doing everything. There's a whole formula you need to follow, but when it comes to the young people, everything just goes out the window. You're not really you're not really leading the session. They're the ones leading it, and you just kind of have to go along with it. But I think definitely the youth workers, Kieran and Jordan, without them, they really know how the kids think, and sort of. At the very beginning, they're all really high energy, and I think, at least for me, when I first started, I didn't really know what to do. But they kind of would break it up. So even though if there was only 8 people, they'd give David and I 4 of them, and then they'd take 4 of them. And then at the beginning, people maybe weren't too interested in what David and I had to offer, but then once they'd see how the other kids had responded, everyone wanted to get involved. And I think it's when you go in, just sort of have that expectation that you'll probably not get to do what you want to do, but in the end, it's if the kids are engaged, that's the key thing with the sessions.
Yeah. Also, I liked how Kieran set up this board at the beginning of each sessions with set of rules, to do's and not to do's, and actually the kids come up and write the rules, to do's and not to do's. So since they came up with it, they were following it very well. So that was fun to watch, because I thought there has to be all these rules which not conveyed, but have to follow. But for me, in terms of the curiosity in action, the whole thing is about having a fun, engaging, and accessible opportunities for the young kids. At the YMCA, I did this by connecting what I have the expertise in and what interests the kids at the same time. So for example, this VR stuff that I told you. So I first set this up and then showed them what a hemoglobin is and how it works, and some science aspects to it, and also at the same time relating to real world experience that they can understand. So it kept the whole session fun and engaging. And in terms of learning, I realized how important ownership and flexibility is more than just perfection on the activity, because it's never gonna go the way it went another way more times than going it in the way that I expected it to be. And also I realized young people, when they have a feeling that their voices shape the activity rather than having a structure, they engage to the activity more deeply and more confidently. So that was something that I learned, and it was surprising. And for the sector, I think it shows the importance of how the ownership and flexibility has to the whole space. So creating a framework that that enables this kind of co-creativity, co-creativity and ownership is more important than just delivering out-of-the-box solutions for everything that I can take back to my work as well. So that's all that I learned.
So I'm just basically going to echo everyone else's sentiments. Nothing goes to plan, or very rarely goes absolutely to plan. But one of our biggest challenges was, so we are quite rural. We were in Auchinleck, and our scientists in residence were in Aberdeen, which is about a 4.5 hour distance away. So scheduling and travel had to be like very carefully considered. So it wasn't always possible for our scientists to be there every single session. So we had to keep up like the activities to keep them engaged. And I basically come up with activities ourselves based on things that Lewis and Katie has came up with. Another thing was convincing the young people to try something new, especially something like science, because to the young people it's like, oh, the mention of science is, oh, I don't want to do that because it relates to school, it relates to, oh, being smart, and they're like, oh, that's not cool. But we did find that Giuliano and Sophie, they, like Stuart said, it wasn't all lab coats, they looked just like us. So we brought them down initially for a meeting before, because it is important to form a good rapport first, or else they're like, oh, who's this? But we found that bringing them down and just not doing anything sciencey initially, just, oh, this is what we like to do, and they were getting involved with what the children like to do. And we found that going forward, they were a lot more engaged. And so yeah, but we're very fortunate that where we work out of is a community centre. So we have the space, we have the privacy. If some of the children weren't feeling it, they're kind of harder to reach children. If they weren't feeling it, we could take them to another room, do another activity. So we were very fortunate like that. But just, yeah, one of the major things was the distance and the scheduling and stuff.
Thanks, Rachel. And I remember that conversation again in one of the earlier action research meetings was what inspired the cookbook, because you were like, oh, what do the young people like to do? They like to cook. And so one of the resources that was developed was the science cookbook, which with some placement students that we were hosting at the time, and that is available online as well with everyone. But I think you can hear, you know, again, a lot of feeling of quite similar learnings and perspectives there. I'm going to maybe just give a bit of an overview of maybe some of the key findings that we've had, and then I'm going to hand over to yourselves. We've got a wee bit of time for questions, and so why don't you have a little think about if there's anything in particular you want to ask either any specific person or in general to the group. And I should say, so obviously a lot of these resources are in the beginnings of the toolkit. One of the main elements that we're trying to also do is think about the impact the program has made and what learning and how we build that evidence base, because obviously we've seen lots of different examples of how these partnerships are so valuable, but we've also seen many examples of why these partnerships are so difficult. I remember the first year I was really struck by, you know, I think for a lot of scientists when they do this type of work, they think about it in terms of schools, you know, going to deliver school workshops. And I think there's lots of reasons for that. One is because, you know, schools are relatively more kind of relatable. I think sometimes it's a bit more accessible to scientists very often, because it's like, okay, you come at this time, you have the support of a teacher, you have learning outcomes, you know, it's a bit more regimented, so young people react in a very certain way, behaviorally and otherwise. And I think youth group, and even just to try and get into the mentality of, like all the things that you absolutely not being the leader, you are absolutely being led, and you're being prepared to do that and thinking about how you do that and structure that. And so I think this is always the difficulty if we want to set up longer term partnerships, because we know that, again, for a lot of young people, they do need those longer term partnerships. How do we think about supporting the partnerships as best we can, when I think even originally we were hoping each partnership might do 7 or 8 sessions together, and actually logistically very often that just wasn't possible with schedules. So I think there's something about that kind of, how do we kind of think about the availability, how do we kind of set up these relationships to be the best they can, even, you know, if you're traveling 4 or 5 hours to then not deliver something, but just come to a workshop. That doesn't feel like that's valuable use of time and resource, but actually it is. It sets up those partnerships much better than it would have. But I know from the outside, if you're a scientist, it's very difficult to justify that time. And so there's something there about how we build that evidence. So the full evaluation report for the program is going to be finished off in the next couple of months, and certainly by December. But just to give you a kind of a flavour of the numbers of the program, the different youth groups that have been involved. Not on this panel, we've got Multicultural Family Base, who are based in Edinburgh as well, who they were part in year 1, and they were paired with Alison and Clara. I think some of you in the room, with the Royal Observatory. And we also have Ormley Community Association up in Thurso, who were paired with a researcher who's based in Aberdeen, but actually came from the same area as in Thurso as well, which I know was a really important link. And again, they had quite a lot of interesting challenge with the travel around that. But again, I think the fact that the scientist was from that area was so important for those young people to see that reflected. The young people that have engaged with the scientists and residents over the program, the 68 different youth group sessions that were supported through the 2 years, the 9 different action and research meetings, the 14 researchers. Alongside that, we've had our community of practices. So these were network meetings that we held open to everybody, and we're going to continue holding these over the next few years. So we had 5 of those, and then we've got our network members, so people part of the mailing list, have got access to the kind of online space. And we've also been delivering training as well. So, and we're going to continue doing this training to kind of share this learning with the wider sector moving forward. So the program learning, so these are very top line. These have come from the observations and the reflections from the action research, but they've also come from the interviews with the practitioners, so with the researchers, with the youth workers. I'm going to stand over here because it might be a little bit easier for me to see. And these are very top line. One of our hopes is that obviously this is going to be explored a lot more in detail in the evaluation reports, but also to write a paper around this. And we've already made a bit of a start about how we might co-write this and use some of the kind of quotes from the interviews. We also did some free writing with some of the groups as well in the last action research meeting to get some inspiration. But I think the main findings really, probably not massively surprising, but actually nice to have some evidence around this. The first side of the equation is that youth work is a key tool for STEM engagement. So youth workers themselves are key STEM champions. You know, and very often they come from similar communities, they look more similar to the young people, they know the young people, they've built those relationships. And as you've already heard, the youth workers' own confidence in using STEM has very much increased through the program. Sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of that kind of increased familiarity. As we've already said, they already have the strong relationships with young people, and that can be built upon. And again, especially in a context where, you know, a scientist is never going to have the same amount of time to be able to build that core relationship within a community, but by building off that relationship and being guided by the youth worker, that's a really strong partnership as an anchor point. This is a great way of engaging with diverse young people, maybe more diverse than groups that might usually go to science festivals or those types of activities. It's a bit more self-selecting. And very critically, researchers have developed their own skills and understanding of engagement very closely and taken that away. And I know plenty of examples where the researchers have used this in their own other activities or built this into their future research as well. And then on the other side, how can STEM engagement support youth work and the kind of broader social outcomes? So most of this is coming from reflective practice with the practitioners and the scientists, but we have seen plenty of instances where the activities, and this is the famous cow onesie, I should say. This is the, that was the bit everyone was waiting for, really. But we've seen instances where young people have explored things like failure through STEM, and it's been a really useful and safe place to explore things like failure. We've seen examples from the action research of young people increasing their resilience, their sense of confidence around the space, the comfortability about working with the scientist and maybe being vulnerable in front of a scientist. STEM can open up new experiences and interests for the young people. So in some cases, you've already heard a lot of the young people haven't engaged in STEM or didn't think what they were doing had STEM elements to it. And also, I should say, and to take Kat's point, very often we say STEM, but for us as an organization, Science Ceilidh, we implicitly mean interdisciplinary STEM. So arts, creativity is very much a part of that. We're not by any, very specific on that at all. And it's about embracing all of those, the creative side as much as the curiosity side is key for us. I think in some instances, actually, we also found that the STEM club, I know for Hearts, for example, actually that did actually bring a different demographic of young people into youth work, so young people who didn't go into the youth clubs, the kind of more different standard youth clubs, as it were, but they were actually engaged by the STEM branding or the kind of scientists and residents approach as well. So I think that's quite interesting as something to consider. STEM activities and the curiosity it generates can create different opportunities for young people to connect with their guardians, their families, their friends. So again, I know in some of the interviews and the action research, young people are talking about the activities and very excited to share that with their families. In fact, in this afternoon, when we have some young people come with their families and share their activities, you might even see that in action today. And then exploring STEM for the youth workers, you've already heard it, but challenges the youth workers to engage in maybe something new, something that maybe not necessarily as versed in, putting themselves into a position where they're exploring and being curious and maybe even vulnerable as well with their young people, and that can help develop their own youth work practice. So, with those reflections in mind, I'm going to open up to questions and invite any from the audience.
Hello. I guess my question is about how the scientists and researchers got involved. One of you mentioned that it's integral to start including engagement in your funding applications, but obviously a lot of them right now do not include that, and a lot of the scientists that I speak to are keen to do things like this but just don't have the time or money to do it. So I guess I was curious how each scientist got involved, why you wanted to get involved, and almost what your reasoning would be for other scientists to get involved in projects like this.
Okay, so to answer the last question, why should you get involved? It's fun, and I think it balances the research quite well. So I definitely include this in my hours per week, and it's a great balance between, like doing computations and then going out to stables and riding a horse. It's like really nice. Funding, so that was part of my grant, but actually most of the funding came from Science Ceilidh and Curiosity in Action, and I learned about them. There was an internal email from someone, because I think someone at the Institute had done it the previous year, and then they advertised it. I don't know how Science Ceilidh got in touch with the IFA. They can answer that. I think that was, yeah.
I seem to remember it was I just seem to remember the university just reached out or circulated something from yourselves in the very beginning 2 years ago. So it was just a circulation amongst staff of the university, anyone interested in being involved, and it sounded fun, so I gave it a shot. It was something I'd never tried before. I'd never tried youth work, only kind of more typical engagements, I guess, like science festivals, things like this. And this is what I was saying earlier, like one of my main learnings was that it completely changed my perspective of what engagement could be. And so that was why I wanted to try it, I think. So, but yeah, including it in funding, I mean, yeah, there's no necessity to do that at the minute from funding bodies, but I feel like maybe it's becoming more the case that when you're applying for typical research grants, that you need to be showing this kind of evidence of engagement, and so hopefully it'll become more and more common practice.
Raj?
For me, I think I just came to UK February 2023, and then I saw this email from the university saying there is this Curiosity in Action thing in Edinburgh, and I never visited Edinburgh at that point, so I was like, yeah, it's a fun day trip, and it's about science. What's the worst thing that could happen? But that day we built like bridges using pasta, and then like other activities like the workshop today, I guess. And after that, yeah, I was not thinking about it too much, but I got an email from Katie asking, do you want to join the scientist in residence thing? It sounds so interesting and fancy that I can say that, scientist in residence. But after going for a few sessions, like not just doing anything, just participate in and seeing what the young people are doing, it gave me the confidence of like how they think, how to interact with them. And when I carried that forward to the Glasgow Science Festival, it felt so natural. There were around 300 kids or something around the 2 days when we are doing this session for the VR. And since I already engaged with all this young people in the YMCA, I could handle any questions that's coming forward. And like when the octopus come in, I just made like a funny thing. It's like, yeah, there's octopus on the corner, but focus on the hemoglobin now. Yeah, and so that was just fun. And in terms of the funding, I'm still a PhD student, so I don't need to worry about writing a grant agreement. But on the other side, we were working on some free writing thing for the upcoming report, so that kind of helped as well, since I'm writing a paper and it's kind of similar. So in that way, I was happy to help. Yeah.
Maybe just to add from our perspective about those questions. So obviously this whole program was funded by the Science, Technology and Facilities Council, which is a research council who fund research of the very big and the very small. So they look at things like telescopes, lasers, microscopes, that type of thing. And so this is part of the public engagement funding. And there is public engagement funding within research. So if for those of you who are from the community side, maybe there is funding available for this type of work. And I think there has been quite a big shift, I would say, over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, really recognizing the value of long-term relationships as opposed to more kind of one-off. And there is always a place for that, but at the same time, I think where we're really trying to motivate and convince funders is that, you know, even the numbers, sometimes you're working with just 10 young people for a year or 2 years, but that impact that you can make through those interventions over time is much bigger perhaps than doing necessarily kind of a one-off for thousands of young people. And so, you know, there's always a trade-off, and there's a place for both within the ecosystem that we say, but I think trying to make the argument of actually the depth and the kind of relationship and how powerful that can be, and then how we can capture it. But what we know is obviously that's hard. You know, it's hard to justify, it's hard to make that time with the best will in the world. Partnerships don't always work out. Capacity issues within the sector is very difficult. You know, so it was really important for us that the youth workers got a little bit of contribution towards their time through the program, and that was built into the grant as well. And then in terms of the matching process, we, as Science Gaily, we've worked with probably most, if not all, of the universities across the Scotland at this point over the many years, and so we knew the right people to kind of talk to. So again, very often within a university, there's someone called there's a public engagement or knowledge exchange team, sometimes a community engagement team as well. And so having known some of these contacts and people, and actually some of them are in the room today, we could then do a call out for the researchers. Now, in our other programs where we help fund community research, we did a bit more of an extensive matching process. But for this one, because we had quite specific, we knew who the youth groups were, and so we were trying to find the closest people who were also interested in this way of working. And again, it's a challenge around the time commitment, and so we really try to communicate that with the scientists, and then where possible we try to get them as close as possible. But you can see Auchinleck to Aberdeen, or the distances, it wasn't always possible. You know, the borders to even Edinburgh, it was not an insignificant challenge to get people, and that doesn't mean that we didn't do it anyway, and it was important that we picked the groups based on rurality, for example, and got widespread across Scotland. But the fact that there are very few scientists who are nearby exactly points the inequities in the system, because then it's actually, you know, that's why these young people don't have these opportunities. And so, you know, we really, I say that to acknowledge that, but also to really thank the scientists who have been involved and taken the time, even within the work time and the weekends, for example, which isn't normally, you know, a healthy working practice necessarily, but the commitment to it, because it's, you know, even if it was only a few times, that makes quite a big difference to help challenging these kind of inequities. But there was a kind of matching process, and Katie was supporting the relationships as they went through as well, where we can. Any other questions? Abby?
A lot of people involved in STEM engagement, we talk about the stereotypes people have about scientists. And so I was keen to ask the youth workers, what did you expect your scientists to be like before you met them? And did they surprise you?
Who wants to go first?
So, Stuart and I don't think we really knew what we were expecting. But when we met Charles was probably a very kind of stereotypical, what we would assume would be a scientist. He came down with his lab coat, his telescope, and the children were like, you told us that this wasn't going to be, and we're like, yeah, right, sorry. So that didn't do much to challenge the stereotype, but then we had Giuliano and Sophie come down, who were very much just like us, just like somebody that they would see in the street. And I think that was good, because the children were like, oh, right, okay, so this is just a normal person. And it makes it makes it a lot more accessible, because they think, well, if they look like us, we could be a scientist as well. So yes, we kind of had the best of both worlds, so we did.
Yeah, I think I personally have worked with quite a lot of scientists for a long time, so I don't know if I really had a big stereotype in my head, but trying to think about the initial reactions with the group, I think, were picturing the sort of, traditional scientist in a lab coat to turn up, and neither of our scientists were that. And I think with Rebecca, having a scientist that was so interested in like arts and performing anyway, and Rebecca was, I mean, we all are multifaceted human beings with loads of different skills, but Rebecca was able to really connect up how you can use your voice with that scientific knowledge of how your body works. And so, I don't know if that answered the question, but hopefully someone else wants to answer as well.
I'm, kind of the same as everyone else. Like, I don't know what I was going to expect. I think I was expecting the kind of traditional sort of Albert Einstein looking man in a lab coat, but kind of echoing what Kat said, like when Loki and Sarah came in, like very normal looking, like just someone you'd pass in the street. And I think, it made it much more tangible to these kids that like they could be a scientist. And I also think because Loki and Sarah, they don't do traditional scientist jobs. It's not like chemistry blowing stuff up. Like the kids realized that like science was much bigger than that and much deeper than that, and that anyone can do all these different sorts of things. And there was only one lab coat in our class, and it came from one of our volunteers. She used to work in a pharmacy, so she had a lab coat, and she was the only one that wore it. But it was really good for the kids to kind of, see, like, feels weird saying normal people, but they had the opportunity to do that.
I feel like I should just disclaimer that scientists are normal people, but just to stress that. But maybe the lab coat, the stereotypical side. I think we get the intention. Danny.
I think like not just for the young people, like what you really helps us understand, because we use science in application with horses every day. Like, what do we feed them? Like, why do we do that? Because we analyze our soil. But we never really think of that term. So when we were then told we were going to be a scientist, we were like, oh God, what do they look like? Because I'm not really sure. Because it made me, I think, in our team understand the application of science more. And then because we got to hang out a little bit, because I think when you're in a science context, there was bits about us having conversations of just don't tell, just try and be more yourself. And so we were really lucky because you're super cool, you know. And we kind of started off on that foot, not what do you do? I think we didn't even really bring that in. So the kids started to also understand the application because we kind of started with that, didn't we? Or you're just a human being like all the people that come into the yard and this is what you do. But we didn't kind of frame it like that. So yeah, we didn't have a massive expectation. I just didn't really think about what a science person looked like, I suppose, now today. I just kind of thought about the application of science and then all the different people that might do that. But yeah, we were really lucky with our scientist. Especially because he slacklines. Slackline.
Was there a question over here?
Thanks, everyone. It's so interesting today. And I'm someone, I'm a scientist. I'm a woman. And I ended up in labs and working on cardiovascular diseases. And I've always been fascinated in science and trying to communicate it. But one thing of this conversation is, I think scientists, we tend to analyze a lot. And so we haven't really heard about that coming out maybe on the panel, but scientists tend to analyze. You know, there's got to be a reason why something happened or whatever. And that I think sometimes can be, for some children and adults, really interesting, and for some really scary, because it's like, why? Why do you keep asking me that? And I get it sometimes from my elder family members. It's like, why do you have to ask that question? I mean, just accept it. But yeah, so I suppose I just want to make that comment is that if in your youth groups you see some kids or some adults sort of being a bit standoffish, I think some people are a bit scared of analyzers. Would anyone else like to agree or disagree or comment?
Reflection trigger.
So we have a lot of the same kids, and why is probably one of the most heard words I hear a lot in the sessions. So I think it was nice to have the scientists in there, because usually when I hear why, it's just, why is the robot moving? And I'm like, because you told it to. But why? And I'm like, I don't know, like I don't have a further answer to that. But when they were asking why, kind of we started calling it Curiosity in Action. It very quickly turned into Science Club. So when they were asking why in Science Club, it was nice to have Loki and Sarah there, and they did actually have whys for them rather than just, I don't know, like because you told it to. And I think the kids really loved, I know there's a few faces pop to mind. It's like they'd ask why, and Loki would give them an answer. Yeah, but why? And then it would just keep going, and then after like 10 minutes, it was like, okay, right, we've got into like why lasers were invented. Like, let's, I think that's deep enough. But yeah, our kids loved why, and I think having a scientist who also loves why, or that's kind of your background you're analysing, it was really interesting to see them paired up together.
Yeah, so one of my first sessions, I was there just sitting there explaining the kids what I do with computer simulations and how these beats are atoms and then they move around and all that. And there was this one young person who was just interested in it, and he just like came to the monitor and it's like, what is this? And then I was just starting to explain my whole work in like a simple way. And then he kept asking why, like, why does this work this way? And I was like, yeah, this works this way because. And then he asked why again on a deeper topic. I was like, yeah, I can handle it. And then one more why. And after like a sixth why, he was like, I didn't even know how to explain stuff that simply. And at one point he was like, so you are basically saying the atoms don't touch each other in real life, so they are always lonely or something. I'm like, what? How do I get away from this? I didn't know. Me and Jordan, the other youth worker there, we were just looking at each other. It's like, do you know the answer? Do you know the answer? But nobody knew the answer. But then he got a bit distracted and then left. So you're like, okay, yeah, that's a good save. So that was the fun of it. On the other side, at my work, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes if some things doesn't work, like I work mostly with codes and like computers, no lab stuff like blowing up in the chemistry lab or something. So for me, when the code doesn't work, there has to be a reason it doesn't work. So I always think about like why it doesn't work. So when I started my PhD, I used to like put too much effort just rerunning all the code, looking it through line by line and see where the bugs are. And then after starting to work with the YMCA and with the young people, I realized sometimes it just doesn't work. And if you give it some time, it would just pop up in your head and you can fix it in a day. So I told this about to my colleagues, and we came up with this word called marination. So like every time something doesn't work, just marinate it for a bit. On the next Monday, it would just work. And people didn't believe it, but I started to feel that it kind of works, and then people started saying the same, and now it's a term in our lab. So yeah, just marinate it if it doesn't work.
I feel like I'll translate well with young people as well. Just marinate. Did you want to come in, Connor?
Just on your comment about like some kids and adults, they're kind of like afraid to like ask why, and I wonder if, at least with young people, education in general is very much built on you need, like exams especially, you need to know the answer or you don't get the marks. And I think when kids get asked questions a lot of the time, even now that I'm doing research, sometimes you're afraid to say I don't know. And I'm wondering if maybe that's a part of it. I think especially inquisitive people are more than happy to admit I don't know, but they are interested by the question of why. And so it's like what you were saying about marinating, like they're all right with sitting with maybe a complicated problem or a question and just mulling it over for a while, where I think maybe some people it's a bit uncomfortable to sit with that. Yeah, it's just something that I'd thought of there.
Sorry, could I just say one thing about the analyse thing? I felt a real expectation to make them analyse as a scientist in residence. And one thing I learned through the process is that I needed to suppress that a lot. And just let them, I would give them the thermal camera and they would just go and explore. And at the beginning I'd be like, oh, why do you think it does that? Why do you think it does that? And they just ignore me, just like my own kids do. And they just go off and do stuff. And I just had to be happy with that. And like that's their way of interacting and questioning. They didn't have to actually answer my persistent nagging.
I think that ties in really well to what I was just about to say, which is I think it's, with our group, we have such a culture of just trying things, because I think there's quite a lot of similarity with science and also with Circus, where if you're trying to learn to juggle, you've got to figure out, I thought I was going to catch that ball and I didn't, and there must be a reason for that, and you actually have to change something that you're doing physically. And I think it was the same with doing the raft building. And so for our group, what seemed to really grab attention and bring the girls into doing the activity in a more enthusiastic and engaged way was finding a really interesting why. And so I think it's a lot to do with how the activity is presented. So if you show something that's, shouldn't be possible, then there's that question mark there of, okay, but how could that happen? And then it asks the question of, is there information I could have that would allow me to do this thing better? So yeah, I think we need the analysers. I don't think our group were particularly scared of them, but I would say they can maybe run straight into doing it.
Thanks, everyone. I might actually start rounding off, if that's okay, Hilary. I know you've got a question, but it's been, we've had a good amount of time to get into some detail. I think it would be good to give people a bit of a break. Just before we finish, maybe I won't invite everyone to speak, but maybe as a what next, does anyone want to quickly share maybe what they're planning next as a next step after the program? Not everyone has to speak, but if there's something or they were looking for collaborators or that type of thing, this is a good time to do a bit of a call out. Danny.
Well, we've put in an application now to an engineering collaboration, so it's to work on water irrigation systems. We really struggle with our flooding. We've done a lot to the site, but it doesn't matter how many gullies or holes I seem to dig, the rain changes a lot every year. So we actually are writing a project just now. I have asked Lewis to come in on it to support me with kind of connecting up with STEM networks. But we are kind of looking for someone who is in engineering. We have reached out to Strathclyde University because they supported us in our biofuel project, so they helped us build the prototypes. We've been trying to dry the poo for 2 years really unsuccessfully. Being solar powered makes it quite challenging. This year it has worked. It's still manual pressing. But yeah, this is a project we're doing, and actually there's a chemistry engagement that came up, and this has kind of come about from the kids, and because in terms of consultation and getting answers, we do well in that, in terms of really diverse groups from sort of disability backgrounds to BAME backgrounds to cared for children, because they're kind of the markers that we hit, and parents like to engage too. So we are looking at using curiosity interaction to engage in different projects that will help sustain the site, but also help create engagement and let young people know, because I think one of our young girls was really interested, wasn't she, in becoming a scientist, so she wants to go to space. And was talking about G-force and lots of things that I couldn't answer, so it's great when you were there, because she knew quite a lot, and she was only 12. All the kids were like, wow, she knows loads. I was like, yeah, she does, doesn't she? So yeah, that's, for us, it's going to open up, I think, different collaborations which can be utilised actually on site, so they're going to be actually there to people to see and to take part in.
Amazing. Maybe any more? One more for a future plan?
So I'm looking to, I mean, I've spoken to you already, Lewis and Katie, about having yourselves partnershipped in research grants, and I'm looking to do that for sure after being involved in this process. When I apply for funding for doing science, I think it's always got to have this element now for me.
Amazing. Well, hopefully it gives you a flavour of some of the sustainability of the programme, and obviously from our side we're really keen to keep it going. We're going to keep our community network going, the toolkits, the evidence. So obviously this afternoon we're going to be thinking about that what next and as we go forward. But maybe just to round off this panel and to give everyone a bit of a break, can we give our action researchers a massive round of applause? It's a small thing, but we do have, for each of our action researchers, a little certificate of appreciation, which we'll give afterwards. And we do have, and Casey helped develop a little cup, which I'll see if I can open at the moment. And so for each of them, there's a little icon representing a component of all the different action researchers. So we have telescopes, we have obviously a horse leading, we have the slack line in there, a fridge. You'll be delighted, and some Coke and Mentos as well. So that'll be for each of you guys. But once more, a massive thank you to these guys. Thank you.